For your movie 13 Sins, you were hired by Jason Blum of
Yes.
Blumhouse?
Yes.
Okay. Productions, Blumhouse Productions. So where did you meet him?
I met him in his office. You know, the last place you'd ever think.
How did the two, let me go back. Okay, so how did the two of you come in contact with each other?
I had got an email from my agent that said, Jason Blum would like to meet you. And then I went and met him. And he had 10 different projects, because Jason Blum is producing, you know, juggling all these projects at the same time. And he was basically just pitching. First of all, he's this rock and roll personality. Have you ever met him?
I have not, no.
He's amazing. Like he's kind of his boots on the table, and he's not the executive the way you would kind of imagine. Very fun and very high energy. And he pitched me all these projects, and I didn't really connect to any of them. And he created an atmosphere that was loose enough and friendly and warm enough that I felt I could say that. I could say, I'm not interested in that story, blah, 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 blah. And when he was done with those 10, he kind of talked over my shoulder and was like, do you want to show him 13? And I turned around and realized that there was someone else sitting in the corner that I hadn't seen before that, which was Brian Kavanagh Jones, who is the producer of 13 Sins. And they gave me the original Thai movie 13 Game of Death to watch. And that was the end of the meeting. And then I watched 13 Game of Death. I loved the movie, but I wasn't too excited about making a remake. No one ever wants to make a remake necessarily, you know? And if they're saying they do, they're lying. But I couldn't at the time. I was working with M. Night Shyamalan at the time on a project, and I knew I had to do something soon, because there's this pressure in Hollywood that they will all forget about you if you don't make something within a year or something, and your career will be over. So at least that's what your agents tell you. So I knew I had to find a new project, and I just couldn't find material that I was interested in. And 13 Sins, or 13 Game of Death at the time, was something that I always had in the back of my head, and I liked the material, and the only thing that spoke against it was that it was a remake. And then I thought, if we can make this different enough and make it our own, and not just, you know, shoot it shot by shot, then it's going to be an interesting project. And so I said yes to that, if I could bring on board David Burke, who had written Last Exorcism, or rewritten Last Exorcism for me, and with whom I was writing with M. Night Shyamalan at the time, and who is a complete genius, who by now is writing Paul Verhoeven's new movie, and Daniel Espinosa's new movie, Robert Rodriguez's new movie, and he has completely blown up. He should be sitting here telling you about his career, not me. But they let me bring him on board, and we wrote a new script. David wrote a new script, which was great. And what was fun about it is that the structure of 13 Sins kind of had this episodic structure, because there are 13 challenges that the protagonist goes through. So you could create a completely new world for every one of these challenges, where normally in a movie there are like 1 or 2 big set pieces and the rest is just kind of connective tissue. Here it was 13 set pieces, you know? So that was really enticing about the material. And then Jason Blum loved it, and then Bob Weinstein loved it and bought it, and then we went to New Orleans to make the movie. See, and this story now feels very clean, and as if it was just this pleasant road from A to B, when of course, you know, it was a 1-year process of sweat and tears and blood, not between us, but just in the movie making process. And the movie turned out completely differently from what anyone else thought. I think better, you know, but that's what I'm talking about when people talk about their movies, that it always feels like it was such a smooth journey. It never was a smooth journey. It was always an adventure and fascinating, and I would do it again in a heartbeat, but it was never smooth, I think.
You think that's why some people don't come back? Because they thought it was going to be one thing, whatever the movie is, and it ends up being not Hearts of Darkness type triumphs that people are going through, you know, Apocalypse Now, where you're, you know, dealing with all sorts of things from opposition from the government, things like that, but, you know, something where it just wasn't what you thought. You know, you're ruminating late at night thinking like, no, this can't happen, and you thought it was going to be where you heard birds chirping. And
right. I have a friend who is a very talented director who just made her first movie, and who said that's it. A beautiful movie. The outcome is gorgeous. Name actors, great. And she said, I have no desire to ever do that again. Why? She just wasn't. She said she could not deal with the feeling of being the king on a throne making the decisions. That to her, what most other directors are craving, what you can get addicted to, you know, that is exactly what turned her off. She was like, I don't want to have that relationship with anyone ever. Like to her, as much as she was trying to build a collaborative atmosphere on set, I think it could never be collaborative enough. She always had the feeling she was the leader of something and she didn't want to be the leader. She wanted to be, wow. She's amazing.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, and I'd never heard that from anyone, that they had too much power on set and that's why they wouldn't do another movie. But she is that person. That makes complete sense, and she might not ever make another movie. I think maybe if she gets over the experience, and most people have to forget the bad experiences to make a movie again, she kind of has to forget the powerful experience of it all to do it again. I don't know. So I'm sure that a lot of people don't make a second movie because they are surprised by how much hostility from the elements, from everything, they are bombarded with and they have to get through.
Right. I'm not sure where I'm going with this, but I'll just say it. So there's this book called Quiet, The Power of Extroverts. Susan Cain?
Introverts.
Introverts, I'm sorry.
I just bought that. I just bought that.
You did? Oh.
Because I am an introvert, my wife is an introvert, and we're having a daughter in a month, and I'm like, that girl is gonna be the introvert of introverts. I better get that book.
It's excellent.
Is it? Yeah?
It's excellent. And she does these case studies of going into Harvard Business School. She goes into another religious college, Tony Robbins seminar, and just how much in this culture we're pushed to be these gregarious, larger-than-life personalities. So I was just relating that back to your friend, wondering if maybe she felt the pressure to be that, and that's very draining if you're an extrovert, right. Or if you're an introvert, excuse me.
Right.
You don't always want to be on level 10, but I think people really resonate, especially in LA, to that, and probably other metropolitan cities.
Resonate to that meaning that they are turning towards the extrovert.
Yeah, they respond to it,
right.
Whereas if you're too in the background, oh, is everything okay?
Right.
Are you okay?
I think
okay.
that is completely the case, because I have that in meetings. That I think creativity and storytelling in itself is a timid process because you are trying stuff out. Constantly you're throwing stuff against the wall, seeing if it sticks. You're not sure of it. You have to see it. It's kind of a, you know, but in a meeting with producers, and I think we talked about that also 4 years ago, you have to pretend as if you have it all figured out. There is no doubt in your mind. You see the movie clearly. All bullshit. Like, I don't know a single creative person who has a vision. I think Hitchcock claimed that he basically had shot the movie in his mind. And maybe, I don't know. I know that that's not the case with me or anyone that I know. But for some reason, there's this convention that everyone has to pretend in those first meetings that you have it all figured out, otherwise you won't get hired. Which I understand from the producer and executive side, because of course you'd rather hire someone who has the confidence and can take over, and you don't have to babysit that person anymore. Like if I put on to display all my insecurities that I have about myself, the creative process, the project, the idea, all that kind of stuff in that meeting, you know, I would be a mess, and the producer would see that and go like, I don't want to deal with that stuff. I'm hiring someone to shield me from all that stuff, you know? So I think that is a personality thing. Like a lot of friends of mine that I went to film school with that I think are the better directors don't work because they can't make it through that first meeting because they can't fake the confidence. You know, and it's a short meeting, it's like an hour long. You have to pretend. There should almost be an acting class for directors to just act confidently for an hour, just get through it somehow and pretend you know what you're talking about. Because you don't. At the beginning of the creative process, it's as if you are meeting someone and you're talking about the plan to write a song. You know, that doesn't exist yet. There is no clear vision of it. You can talk about ideas, you can brainstorm, you can talk about what you don't want to do, what you want to avoid, what you like the last Fincher movie, you like The Darkness, or there are references, but to pretend that you have the product already made in your mind, I think it's kind of insanity.